In 1954, post-war Japan was still reeling and rebuilding from the tragic loss of two major cities. To date, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are the only areas struck by nuclear weapons as an act of war. And while its defenders claim that ultimately there were fewer civilian and soldier casualties as a result of these bombs ending the war then and there, that doesn't undo the damage or the emotional gut punch that losing that many people instantly causes on a nation, let alone the world that was from then on forever changed and under the ever-looming threat of more nuclear attacks. Japan coped with this new scar through a number of ways, but one soon became an icon. In 1954, Ishiro Honda and Eiji Tsuburaya released the first Godzilla movie. It was the early days of Japanese film, and nobody had ever seen something like this before. The film was about Godzilla, this new giant monster called a Kaiju. It later approached Japan and laid waste to its cities, an apt metaphor for the damage caused by nuclear weapons and, in a way, personifying the very fear associated with them in a more visual, visceral, and monstrous way. It became iconic. Though, like with most horror movie monsters and action heroes from classic movies, while the first of their franchise is deep and profound and symbolic and considered a masterpiece, the sequels really got kind of cash grabby and silly, you know? I immediately think Rambo. I mean, the first one was this deeper movie about Rambo, a tragic victim and victimizer of war and violence. You get metaphors for PTSD and emotional trauma, and it's not only glorifying the violence, it's showing just how messed up it is that stuff like this happens. And then in the sequels, he's shooty, mass murdering, stab, muscle man, war hero, explosion America, whoa! And the same thing happened to Godzilla. Sure, it invented a genre, but that genre kinda got silly. Like, oh, Godzilla, he's fighting an ape now. He's helping other humans fight other monsters. He's flying like this somehow. It just got more and more ridiculous, to the point where the kaiju genre was seen as a thing for kids, more so than for adults. I mean, think about the Ultramans and the Power Rangers and all that. Those years as essentially a children's franchise is why Pokemon is no stranger to Godzilla references. And it definitely helps that the Pokemon movies are distributed and sometimes partially produced by the same company as the Godzilla franchise from the start, Toho. That's also why many Pokemon in the anime use the same roar sound effects as various kaijus in the Godzilla franchise. In this award-winningly good video of ours, we go over just about all of the Godzilla references in Pokemon. But since then, the clearest and most obvious Godzilla reference in Pokemon has happened. The pseudo-legendary Pokemon line of Scarlet and Violet, Frigibax, Arctibax, and Baxcalibur. Just look at Baxcalibur. Not only does it evolve at level 54, a reference to Godzilla's original release in 1954, but just like, look at it. The colors, the stance, the long, thick neck, and the weird spine crest thing on its back. Like, if you just take Godzilla's iconic backplates and mix them with a snowflake a little, you get this. Why a snowflake? Well, because Baxcalibur's line is Dragon Ice type, which itself works as a pseudo inverse reference to Godzilla, whose nuclear energy breath is all about heat and melting, whereas Baxcalibur blasts cryogenic air out from its mouth. This air can instantly freeze even liquid hot lava, according to the Pokédex. It also launches itself into battle by flipping upside down and spewing frigid air from its mouth. Okay, what? Why would it want to flip upside down? That seems terrible. Okay, but there is actually more to this Pokemon line than just a Godzilla reference, as evidenced by its pre-evolutions, all their names, and the strange red spiky bits on their wrists. What is up with those? Well, I'll tell ya. But first, why is it so cold in here? It's summer! Great! Great, just great. Gosh dang it, great. No good. The AC is broken.
Shouldn't that mean it's hot in here?
No, I can't turn it off, and it has no set minimum. It's just set to go. Why is that even an option? Can I have some warmth, please?
My flames are ethereal and send shivers down spines. There's no warmth.
Dang it. Oh, my electric bill. Sponsor time! Helix Premium Mattresses are the perfect mattresses for any time of year. I took their online sleep quiz, which matches you and a partner to the perfect mattress, and we got the Helix Midnight Luxe, which has a cooling cover. It really helps keep you from overheating when under warm blankets in a nicely heated home in winter, or when just trying to exist while asleep while in the heat of the hot air in the heaty summer. The heat is inescapable, but at least it's better with this cooling cover. Did somebody say 100-night sleep trial to make sure you love it? And a 10-year warranty?
No.
Well, they offer that, and 2 free pillows, which I will now use to try and keep warm. Praise Helix! You can visit helixsleep.com/Lockstin to get 20% off of your Helix mattress along with those free pillows. And thanks to their flexible financing options, you can invest in your sleep now and really reap those benefits. You spend like a third of your life in bed, so your bed better be good and benefit your quality of life, not detract from it. And hey, we're talking about Frigibax, and that sounds kind of like fiberglass.
No, it doesn't.
Which Helix mattresses don't have any of.
Why would they?
Because a year ago it was a trend for cheap mattress manufacturers to use as a cheap filler because it's really cheap, but terrible for your health and well-being.
Typical.
And did I mention free shipping and super easy setup?
I'm sure you did in the last 100 Helix promos.
You kind of ruined the tone of these sponsored segments, Maxo. Like how Helix ruined my bad sleep by turning it into good sleep. Check them out at the link below. And thanks so much to Helix Sleep Premium Mattresses. Baby Baxcalibur, aka Frigibax, has some Godzilla references of its own. Frigibax absorbs heat through its dorsal fin and converts the heat into ice energy. The higher the temperature, the more energy Frigibax stores. Converting heat into energy is literally what nuclear power plants do. All that smoke you see coming out of the huge smokestacks at power plants is actually just steam, and completely safe and significantly less radioactive than the smoke given off from coal plants. Fun facts. Nuclear is the safest power method that is capable of outputting the power that we need globally. To oversimplify it, using radioactive rods, nuclear plants heat up water, convert it into steam, which rises, and the rising steam spins turbines, generating electricity. Fun fact, if you've eaten like 2 bananas or flown in a plane at all, you've absorbed more radioactivity than living next door to a nuclear power plant your whole life. Yes, the accidents and meltdowns are bad, but honestly, they are worse for PR than they are for the environment, especially when you consider that coal, gas, and oil plants that they are replacing, or should be anyway, are significantly more dangerous and deadly for the environment and individual people. Yes, wind and solar are even cleaner than nuclear, but they aren't viable everywhere, and also stepping stones, people. You can't all or nothing a civilization. All that does is drive people away from your stance altogether. Hence, the societal fear and ignorance towards nuclear. Anyway, rant over. Frigibax is ugly and I don't like it. It is like the pug of lizards. But I like its other dex entry. Using the power of its dorsal fin, it cools the inside of its nest like a refrigerator. Have you ever felt behind your refrigerator? It's actually pretty warm. And that's because, to oversimplify it, they work not by adding cold to their insides, but rather by absorbing heat out of it and pushing it outside. Neat. Unlike Frigibax, I really don't like it. So let's evolve it into its even cooler and best form, Arctibax. My immediate thought when looking at Arctibax is, oh, it's like a baby Spinosaurus, if you consider the older, less accurate Spinosauruses, that is. And that fits pretty well, especially now that we know that Spinosaurus was a semi-aquatic dino, which is pretty perfect since the Pokemon is part ice type, and ice is basically just semi-water when you get right down to it. But actually, there's a dinosaur that fits even better for both Arctibax and Baxcalibur. Because remember, Scarlet and Violet take place on Paldea, which is based on the Iberian Peninsula, which is where the fossils of the Concavenator were first found. Concavenator? I hardly know her. The Concavenator was a Carcharodontosaurid theropod dinosaur, and it had just the weirdest backside you've ever seen. Look at this. What What is that? Why is it called the Concavenator? That is as convex as can be. What is even going on here? Well, apparently, thermoregulation. Like most animals today with big, wide, but thin parts like this, it's all just to keep them cool. Warm blood from their inner body pumps into these extremities, which then, thanks to their large surface area, expel the heat out into the air, keeping the animal from overheating. These pseudo-legendaries just take that to an even more icy extreme, and also kind of the opposite. All three of them have the ability Thermal Exchange, which boosts the attack stat of the Pokemon when it is hit by a fire-type move, and also prevents the Mon from being burned. So they absorb that heat from the fire attack through their fin and turn it into more icy power. Power they not only breathe, but swipe and slash with. Those weird doodads on their wrists? You'll notice that Concavenators have those too, only a little bit higher up on the arms. These were quill-like proto-feathers, and that's all there really is to say about them. But they definitely confirm that this line is partially based on Concavenator. Okay, really though, what is with that name? So it turns out that it's not named after the convexness of its back hump, but rather the concaveness between its back hump and the smaller tail hump. So it's named after its negative space that it doesn't actually have. Like the negative number -1, or freezing temperature in Celsius, all being negative. Godzilla -1 degrees? Anybody? No? Still gonna make that the thumbnail. A way more surprising inspiration for the line could be the Komodo dragon. If you look at the French names for all three Mon, you see that a lot of them have Odo in their name, like Komodo, which is also in the French name for Komodo dragons. First off, Komodo dragons are the biggest currently alive lizard, practically breaking the scale at a whopping 79 to 91 kilograms and being 8.5 feet long. The longest one in captivity was 10.3 feet and weighed over 355 pounds. So it's absolutely no surprise that Komodo dragons are the apex predator of the region they live in, especially when you consider their secret weapon. They're mildly venomous. For the longest time, scientists wrongly thought Komodo dragons are just dirty and messy, and the septic bacteria festering in their mouths would eventually infect and kill their prey that got away after being bitten or scraped by their teeth once. Like, baby girl, your behavior is so yucky disgusting. But actually, it turns out they don't harbor nearly as much harmful mouth bacteria as, say, a high school boy's mouth. And Komodos actually do produce their own venom they secrete from glands in their lower jaw. So yes, the venom is still in their saliva rather than being injected like a snake, but still, it's venom. Komodo dragon venom works in a few ways. The biggest is not letting blood clot, preventing the wound from healing anytime soon, but it also causes paralysis and hypothermia. Hypo meaning low, thermia meaning temperature, which when combined with paralysis causes the prey to go into shock and lose consciousness. And also really is just like being frozen, is it not? Being shiveringly cold with hypothermia and not being able to move with paralysis. That's very akin to just being frozen. It's pretty good. Plus, the line is dragon type and Komodo dragon colors, but so are most lizards, honestly, though. But I guess you could say Baxcalibur looks like someone took a Komodo dragon and tried to make it into a kaiju with its gray color and even lighter gray head and general muzzle shape, and taking the yellow skewed color around the Komodo dragon's eyes and making it the actual eye color. But of course, at its core, it's a Godzilla reference, but ice type. So the backplate resembles part of a snowflake and a huge fantasy magic sword, not unlike Excalibur. Yep, now we're finally going to address the names. The Bax in all of their names is just because they do all of their cold, icy magic power through the plates on their backs. Then they are, like me, frigid, arctic, and a caliber. Well, there's also Excalibur too, you just add a B in front of it.
Wouldn't that be Baxcalibur?
So, Excalibur was Arthur's famous magical sword that he pulled out of a stone and thus obtained the throne/rulership of Britain. If we think of Baxcalibur's body as the stone, then in this case, the sword is coming up and out of the stone instead of down and into it, hilt side up, which is an honestly pretty heavy metal inversion of that famous motif. Just imagine having to pull the sword from the stone and the hilt is inside the stone, making it even harder, and you have to grab onto the sharp blades and bleeding the whole time. Wicked. It is also said that in the first battle where Arthur drew Excalibur in combat, its blade shone so bright that it blinded his enemies, much like how painfully bright and reflective ice and snow is in the tundra. Plus, Godzilla is frequently referred to as the king of the monsters, since the first movie even, though specifically when it was localized for American audiences in 1956, but the title has lived on to this day. So like Excalibur showing that Arthur is the rightful king, it's here inside this Pokemon to show that it is the king of the monsters. Like Godzilla. It is in every single way a walking Godzilla reference, and that is so cool. I like it because it's ice type. It's cool. To learn more about all of the Godzilla references in Pokemon, we do have that video I mentioned earlier again about how Tyranitar, who is said to be a Godzilla reference, is actually more fitting of another popular kaiju even better. Check out those videos now and never stop using your noggin. There's not enough space for me to walk this way in this room, so I'll just be here. Click 'em.